Hello all, this is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3, and in this particular video I want to talk to you about how do you actually get unlimited data for your doctorate. So if you don't know me, I'm an associate professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There were so many people that helped me out that I wanted to pay the favor forward and help you out. All right, so I'm in beautiful Pittsburgh right now. It's actually a really wonderful, beautiful city. It's the fall and I'm very much enjoying this. But I wanted to talk to you about how do you get access to unlimited data during your doctorate. So the first thing that I would want you to focus on in terms of getting unlimited data for your doctorate is to focus on your research question first. And there is a lot of different reasons why you want to do that. So the first reason you want to focus on your research question and try to figure out what that is. So, there's videos that I've done in the past, but basically you want to think about what is the phenomenon that you're actually looking at and what are you truly interested in? And it takes a long time to sort of figure that thing out. And the reason you want to do that is it's going to focus your time in terms of gathering data. It's going to make things really easy, or much more easier than going out and kind of just wandering in the woods in terms of figuring out what kind of data that you want for your project or your PhD research. The other thing that's going to happen, if you have a research question, it makes it really easy to not only sort of pinpoint secondary data, but also to motivate the conversation when you actually go and talk to people for primary data. So that's the stuff like interviews, for example, or doing ethnographies or something along those lines where you actually go out and get stuff done. Maybe it is going out into a city and finding and talking to people. And the reason you want to do that is you want to be as focused as you possibly can. So when you're focused, you can open up a conversation really quickly rather than kind of being ambiguous in terms of what you're going to do, in terms of the data that you're going to gather. It's going to be much more difficult to sort of have this conversation if you don't really know what you're interested in just yet. And so you can kind of go in terms of accessing data or getting your research question in the beginning. You can kind of have loosey-goosey sort of interviews and stuff with a few people, but that's going to be a waste of your time and it's going to feel like it's a waste of their time. But when you're very focused on the thing that you're trying to gather on, and we're constantly getting more and more focused as we're developing our projects, and so don't be afraid with that. But as you get more and more focused, you begin to sort of realize what you should be looking at. The other thing, and the second thing that is really important in terms of secondary data, the context itself, while it is important to a particular theory, it's not necessarily the end-all and be-all in terms of when you're developing the theory or looking at the thing that you're trying to look at. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that often you want to look at the particular theoretical lens and come up with a research question based on the theoretical lens, and then you try to look for sort of context or contextual sort of situations that might sort of elucidate or highlight the particular research question that you're trying to answer or look at, right? So it might be that you want to look at hospitals, for example, and you're maybe looking at it's how hospitals are being administered, or how is healthcare. How is a certain type of healthcare administration, how is that actually impacting sort of patient outcomes? And if you know that specifically what you're trying to look at, the patient outcomes that you're trying to look at, maybe it's infection rates and the particular governance style perhaps at a hospital, maybe it is centralization, for example, or decentralization, then you can identify the specific cases around the country, around the world, that that there's sort of rich cases of that happening, right? So it might be decentralization of a particular hospital. So you look for cases where there's a lot of decentralization of a hospital system. Maybe in Pittsburgh, I don't know, maybe that there is stuff that's going on with decentralization that you are clearly trying to sort of understand, right? So, or that is clearly happening, and you could go talk to those particular healthcare administrators about their decentralization that they're experiencing. And that might be very helpful for them because they're trying to figure out what is going on with that, and it's also helpful for you because then you can carry on a conversation with what you're trying to do. So it's the key thing is to focus on the particular research question. The other thing that happens is, if you didn't know this, is once you understand the theory, it can be applied in many different contexts. So it's not just about healthcare administration, for example, that you can apply centralization and decentralization. We can look at like corporate organizations, large corporate organizations such as maybe IBM, for example, that might experience that particular phenomenon, or the military, and you can look at different contexts and sort of zoom in and out of those particular contexts that make sense for the particular research question that you're looking into, right? And so it's often very important for you to go into having a clear research question and a sort of a clear theoretical paradigm before you actually jump into sort of discovering data. But there is a third thing that I wanted to point out, and this is kind of really important in terms of making progress. So you often have to do, it's a bit of a dance between what you're trying to do in terms of discovering empirical data and as well as coming up the research question. So often what you will do as a researcher, and it doesn't matter what particular field that you're going to look into, but you want to sometimes look at the data first in the sense of getting sort of exploratory understanding of what's going on. And I'm not saying like going out and doing hypothesis testing or doing things that, in terms of, really going into the data, but just getting a sense of what the data is about and what you're looking at is about, and then kind of getting research questions from that as well. So you're kind of going back and forth. So you might start off with a research question at the beginning about centralization and decentralization. You're like, well, maybe I'm going to look at the hospital sector or healthcare administration. So then I'm going to dig into healthcare administration and find a specific case that is interesting, right? So infection rates and maybe the effects of centralization on nursing staff, for example. Well, then you want to look at the available data on nursing staff or physicians. There's actually a large data set that lots of people use on hospitals and physicians. I think it's the American Hospital Association. I might be blanking on that, but basically it's a large data set. And you can look at the key data that's in there once you have an idea, and then you could start digging down into that data in terms of thinking about research questions that make sense for what you're trying to understand, right? So it's a bit of a dance, and that's why it's important to have a research question up at the beginning so you can sort of narrow down this dance as much as you possibly can, because you're going to be going in all sorts of different directions if you don't have that focus at the beginning. So that's what I would do in terms of getting unlimited access to data during your doctorate, is to be focused at the beginning and spend some time at the beginning sort of thinking about what is it that I'm really truly interested in, and what does that mean in terms of what the thing I'm truly interested in. Because what's going to happen is once you do that, you're going to be able to identify data sources, but then you're also going to take a next level in terms of your understanding. And then once you have those data sources, you can sort of pinpoint on the data that really matters, and then come up with a research question that is specific to the context and specific to the theory that makes a lot of sense, and that you could build it all together and craft a story or a research question that is really poignant, that you couldn't have done before without being focused at the beginning. So the most difficult thing is to just go get secondary data or just go in many different directions, but you want to be focused at the beginning. Think about the theory and in terms of a research question, go and explore the data some more, and then come back and do that several times and come up with a really focused research question before you actually jump into anything too much. And it might take you, in my experience, especially as somebody that's learning this process, it's probably going to take you like 6 months before you actually sort of get a good feel of what it is you're trying to look at. It might even take longer. It's not unusual for people to take much longer to sort of discover what that is. And that's going to be your first sort of iteration, right? Where you jump in and you try to make sense of what's going on. But then there's going to be several other iterations that happen after that, right? So you might sort of think about, well, this is an interesting context and this makes a lot of sense here. But then we can look in this context over here and we can apply the same sort of thing, and they might have better data over here. And you kind of go back and forth until you kind of arrive upon, you kind of converge between the data that you're looking at and as well as the research questions that you're looking at. And that's going to take a little bit of time in terms of this dance of going back and forth. So hopefully this helped you in terms of understanding how you actually get unlimited data and access to unlimited secondary as well as primary data. And the key thing is to be focused with your research question and the theory first before you actually start digging down into the empirical data. And I know you're going to want to jump into the empirical data first. We all want to do that kind of stuff because that's the fun things. That's where you come up with actual discoveries. But just take your time and think about this and read some stuff first before you dig into the actual data. It's going to save you a lot more time, guarantee it, because you're a lot more focused, and you're going to, it's going to feel just, it's going to sort of contain a lot more of the sort of search and the wrestling that you have through the process. All right, so if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. I do appreciate it. As well as subscribe if you want to join the movement of reciprocity. All right, take care and have a good day. Bye.